Hi guys, and welcome to Stephen King Sematary Club. Dolores Claiborne is a book that I mentioned in my last video. It's a sister book to Gerald's Game. They both came out in the same year. They reference each other a little bit, and very important things happen in both books during the 1963 eclipse of the sun that put portions of Maine into full darkness. I was going into this expecting to hate it because I'd only read it one time and I was quite a bit younger. I never purchased it in hardback, which is usually a sign that there was a reason for me to not want to own it. And when I started reading it, I had to go through, 50 pages or so before I got into the rhythm of it and felt like it wasn't as bad as I remembered. This book is told from the point of view of Dolores Claiborne. Dolores Claiborne is the only one who speaks in the entire book. There are things that she says because she's talking to three people, two cops and a reporter who's recording her story. And when they talk to her, we don't hear them address her, but we hear her rephrasing their question and then answering it. Or if they make a comment, she imbibes it, we don't hear it, and then she tells them something. So the whole thing is in her voice, which is a little strange, and if you're not used to that kind of thing, it's kind of off-putting. And the dialect is, I don't know if it was heavier in the beginning of the story or if I got used to it and so it didn't seem as jarring when I got further into the book. But eventually you get into the rhythm of the book and it flows easily, which it didn't seem to flow in the first few pages. And then once you hit that rhythm, you get into the stride. It's just easy to sail through it. And there are no chapter breaks, nothing. You just have to kind of read and pick a spot to stop. The paperback is 372 pages. You just read, find a good stopping spot, and then go from there. But it does build in its momentum, so it is an easy, just once you get going, you want to sail through it. The setting is Little Tall Island, which is a very tiny island, part of Maine, and not very many people live there. So it's isolated. You have to take a ferry to get to the mainland. It reminds me of Midnight Mass, where there's just hardly anyone there, and everyone knows everyone's business. So Dolores has been accused of killing her employer, Vera Donovan, and she goes through this whole thing about how she did not kill this woman, but she did kill her husband. And even though people suspected it, she never confessed until this point. She's making her confession now. So I will quickly brief you on the story in case you don't really want to read this. So Vera Donovan is kind of a bitch. She's a hard woman to work for, and Dolores gets along fine with her because Dolores is a no-nonsense type woman. She needs to support her family because her husband is a drunk and not really a layabout, but kind of. And she has 3 children. This is in the late 50s, early 60s. And she is a housekeeper and works just crazy hours. She's no stranger to hard work. And Vera Donovan is a rich lady who summers on the island and then goes back to the mainland. But once her husband dies, she starts living on the island full-time, and she employs Dolores full-time. Vera likes everything done a certain way. She fires you if you mess up. 3 times and you're out, basically. To me, it makes sense. To Dolores, it makes sense. If you can't remember to do something on the 3rd time, then it's not the job for you. So Dolores and her husband, Joe St. Clair, she went back to Claiborne, that's her maiden name. So Dolores and Joe, they got married because she was pregnant. They don't have the best marriage, and he would occasionally hit her, and she put an end to that by standing up to him. She hit him with a pitcher, a creamer pitcher, and broke it against his face and threatened him with a hatchet and said, if you hit me again, I'm going to kill you. Well, their daughter witnessed this. And ever since that, her daughter really had no idea what was going on, and Joe started poisoning her against her mother, telling her that, your mom's crazy. She threatened to kill me for no reason. The daughter, Selena, she starts acting strangely. She's wearing baggy clothing. She seems withdrawn. She's not happy anymore. And Dolores finally drags it out of her that Joe has been sexually molesting her. So this is a common theme, and it's definitely a common thread between this book and Gerald's Game. So Dolores puts a stop to it immediately. She confronts Joe. She tells him to knock it off, and then she makes plans to take the kids and run away. And she goes to the bank to take the kids' college funds, clear them out to make her escape. Well, Joe had already cleaned out the college funds and put them into an account that only has his name on it. So she tells Vera this situation. She wasn't planning to, but she just breaks down in the middle of her job and starts crying about it, and Vera kind of hints at the fact that she may have killed her husband, and some women find this to be the best method to get out of a certain situation. Because then Joe's money would go to Dolores. She had already wanted to kill him because of the whole thing with Selena. She decides that during the eclipse, everyone will be distracted because everyone will be watching the eclipse either on the roof of a hotel in town, or they will be on a ferry boat that Vera has chartered to kind of hang out in the ocean. And with the cover of darkness, plus everyone being away from home, Dolores is going to have a perfect opportunity. So Dolores ships off the children. She buys some alcohol for Joe to get him drunk. And she tells him that she found out about the money that he had stolen and deposited into his own account. So Dolores says that the bank gave her the money in cash, and she hid it out in their backyard amongst the blackberry bushes. He gets pissed off. He starts trying to strangle her, and then he tells her, show me where the money is. So she takes him out there, and she knows that there's an old well that they don't use anymore, but the cover is spongy and it will give under weight. So she has already planned to lead him out there. She starts running away from him. She jumps over the well cover, and he doesn't, notice it, and he falls right into the well. But he doesn't fall to the bottom. He manages to prop himself up. So it's not a clean death like she had hoped, where he would just fall into the well, break his neck, and die. He lingers for a long time. And he's calling to her. He's really fucked up. He even climbs up and grabs her ankle. So she almost gets dragged into the well. Dolores has her vision of Jessie, and Jessie had one of her in Gerald's Game, but she sees Jessie sitting in her sundress on her dad's lap when they're watching the eclipse. And then later in the story, she gets a premonition about Jessie being an adult woman and being in trouble, which coincides with Jessie being tied up in Gerald's Game. So that was an interesting additional crossover. So anyway, Joe dies, but it takes a while. Dolores declares him missing. She hasn't seen him. She calls around. She gets brought in front of people for an inquest, and they're questioning her about how, he didn't die right away, and it looks like he got his head kind of smashed in, and, you didn't hear his cries, all this stuff. There is a reference to a short story that will be coming up in Nightmares and Dreamscapes. She says, quote, I gave it 3 seconds with a My Pretty Pony between each one. Page 295. So when she's being very careful with her answers, she's taking her time before she'll answer. And then My Pretty Pony time will come up in Nightmares and Dreamscapes. There was also a reference to insomnia. Not entirely a reference, but it's like a seed was planted for insomnia because he talks about the 3 sisters of fate, and that is a book coming up. So I'm guessing he already had the idea. So we get back to what's currently happening, and it's, what happened to Vera Donovan. She was plagued by guilt for killing her husband. So she's had all these hallucinations and nightmares, and Vera has been upset for a long time. Dolores has always had to comfort her. But this time she just has a total freak out, climbs out of her wheelchair, stumbling around, and she falls down the stairs. and she ends up dying, but not before she and Dolores kind of have a small heart-to-heart. And it's a touching moment between two old women who share some dark secrets. In the end, it does look like Dolores did it, especially because she is given Vera's estate, because Vera's children that she's been pretending she's been estranged from this entire time, they died as young children. The working theory that Dolores had is that they found out that she was instrumental in their father's death, and they blackmailed her to give them things. And one of the things they wanted was a Corvette, and the kids were driving it recklessly, and they crashed into a quarry and drowned. And this would have been right before Vera started living full-time on the island, prior to the eclipse. So this whole time she's been pretending like her kids are still alive, and they're not. Which basically is why Dolores ended up inheriting everything, because Vera has absolutely no one else. And Dolores is cleared of the charges, and she actually anonymously donates that $30 million to an orphanage. There was this really great passage that I'm kind of sad is buried in this book, because I don't see myself reading this more than another time. Quote, "One way or another, all the bridges between that time and this one have been burned. Time's a reach too, you know, just like the one that lies between the islands and the mainland. But the only ferry that can cross it is memory, and that's like a ghost ship. If you want it to disappear, after a while, it will." Page 363. So yeah, then we have reference to The Reach as well, the other short story. I just really liked that sentiment, and like I said, I'm kind of sad that it's buried in this book. It's not one of Stephen King's best. I liked it a lot more than I remembered liking it, and I would not be opposed to reading it again. It does go fast, and it has a compelling story. So I actually do recommend Dolores Claiborne, which shocks me. There are a lot of little bits in here that are quite good.